Well, good evening and welcome. We're thrilled to have you with us tonight on the fourth of our Story Bearer sessions. Hope that you're sitting comfortably, and we really hope that you can enjoy and join us on part of this journey for the next half hour or so. I don't know how your week has been, but we're really glad to have you with us today. Whether you were with us last week or joining us for the first time, we're thrilled to have you with us for these Story Bearer sessions, where for some of you, you'll know that actually our heart behind this is that particularly this series, circumstances of coronavirus, what we hope to do through what we talk about, our guests coming on, and my wonderful co-host, I'll introduce to you in just a moment, is to really look at how we can find the words in this season to connect our stories and our experiences of faith with the people around us that we know and love and connect with on a day-to-day basis. So we'd love to encourage you, to equip you. We've been talking over the previous weeks about our Story Bearer book. If you haven't got a copy, let me encourage you to get that. But also through our Great Commission Facebook group and through the EA website, we'd love to encourage you to join with us both today and in the days to come. So without further ado, you'll notice for those that have joined us that somebody is different with us this evening. Until now, we've been with my co-host, Phil Knox. And for those of you who were with us last week, you'll have heard Phil explain that actually part of his journey at the moment with his family is that his mum is critically ill. And so Phil wasn't able to be with us this evening. We're obviously thinking of him and praying for him daily and encourage you to do the same, please. But tonight, we know that Phil is watching from home, but we're delighted to welcome the wonderful Sian Rees. So good evening, Sian. How are you?
Good evening, Rachel. I'm really well. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. I'm going to come back to you in a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself, Sian. But for many of us, part of this journey is actually to be discerning, isn't it? How we feel about this word of evangelism or witness and how we connect the dots of our stories with our friends. So, Sian, I'd love to ask you, you've been a bit of a super fan, I think, joining us week in, week out. We're really grateful. You can get that little top fan badge, can't you, on Facebook?
Right. Yes, please. I'll have that.
Absolutely, well deserved. But we really appreciate that you've been with us on this journey, and hope that for some people at home too, who can tell us on the comments where you're watching from this evening. But part of the journey so far has been looking at actually how in this season particularly we can be praying for our friends, how we can connect our words and our actions together. We looked at that last week, didn't we, with Les Isaac, how we can also sense that prompting from God to actually get involved in the lives of those that we love and show them in word and action and so on. So you've been watching some of these. I know that you've read the book as well by Phil. Tell us anything that stands out to you from the sessions so far, anything that's struck a chord, that's changed any way that you think about things or impacted what you do.
Yeah, sure. Well, just to introduce myself, I am Sian, as it says on the screen, and I am the director of the Evangelical Alliance here in Wales. I'm passionate about Jesus, but I'm also passionate about people. So two of the things that have really struck me about these Story Bearer sessions, and in fact, from the book, but first of all, from these sessions, I've been so encouraged that, yourself, Rachel, Phil, and all of the guests, you are just so different from one another. And yet each one of you have found a way that you are comfortable with to be able to share Jesus with other people. And that's really boosted my confidence, because I can just be me, right? And I can just bring Jesus from my sort of way of comfort, if you like. And then the second thing that I've really been reminded about profoundly is to be intentional in praying for my friends. And I know that sounds so basic, but we can get sloppy about it. And so I've been challenged just to set reminders in my phone to pray for XYZ friends, but also to be intentional about praying for opportunities to share with them as well.
Amazing. Yeah, brilliant. And as we mentioned, some of those things that you picked up on, again, just to say to you, those of you at home, if you missed any of the sessions that we've recorded so far, then please do go back and watch them if they serve as an encouragement to you. Sian, as you said last week, or as we remind ourselves, Les Isaac talked about this challenge to all of us to not just do things to serve and look after and love those that are in our communities, which obviously at this current pandemic season we see a lot of, don't we? The church doing amazing things the world over to really serve those around them. But the challenge more personally too for us to sync up the words and the action and so on. So that challenge was set out for all of us over the last week. How about you? Have you seen anything even in the last few days or experienced anything that has been almost that syncing up of something that God's put on your heart to do or to say to those around you, and maybe the difference that it's made or the challenge that it's been?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think in the last few weeks, actually, I've been really challenged about the need to put what I've learned from the book into action. And one of the things that I decided to do a few weeks back was to write to all 60 of our members of Senedd and all 40 of the Welsh MPs, not to lobby them on any issue or ask for finance or assistance in any way, but literally just to say, that I'm so grateful for them, that I have not got the slightest inclination as to the pressures they're under. I just want them to know that I am praying for them and for their families. And then I went on to explain a little bit in that email just that, you know, the church is genuinely at the forefront of tackling some of the biggest issues of this crisis, you know, through looking after the homeless, through feeding people, through food banks, by chatting with the isolated and the lonely, and so on and so forth. And you know, the response has been phenomenal. I have had some of the most beautiful replies. People telling me how incredibly grateful they are for Christians serving people in their communities. Others telling me that they've been tuning in online to various church services. And we've even been able to offer to connect them with a local church. So, you know, that's just a really practical way. And it didn't take much. It was just an email, but it was heartfelt and it was sincere. I am praying for them. So just to be able to encourage them and show gratitude is a great thing.
Amazing. Yeah, well, thanks for outlining those for us, Sean, because actually, like I said, it's not rocket science, is it? We could all be writing to the teachers that have gone back this week, or indeed people who are starting back up in businesses or in shops. But as you said, the impact actually that has on individuals, how it just shows God's love in action, isn't it, is quite phenomenal. Actually, a small action from us can make all the difference. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. So we're thrilled this evening, are we, to be looking at this whole idea of actually how we tell our story, but also the value that we put on it. So I'm really delighted this evening to welcome our guest. Miriam is going to come and join us. So Miriam Swanson, née Swaffield, known to many of you, and here she is, as if by magic. Miriam, we're so grateful to you. Many of you will know Miriam or have seen her in various different places as she speaks both nationally over here in the UK and internationally, but is also the Global Student Mission Lead for Fusion. So welcome to you, Miriam.
Hello.
Now, we know that you're not on, great to have you with us. We know that you're not on UK soil. So tell us a little bit about you, where you are, what time of day is it with you at the moment?
Yeah, it's about 8 minutes past 3 o'clock in the afternoon here in Jacksonville, Florida. So a little bit further away. New name, new neighborhood. It's all gone a bit weird, everyone, but we're doing okay.
Yeah. Brilliant. So a whole new community that you're a part of, like you said, a whole new life. How has lockdown been for you then? Not only coping with all the newness of life, but actually now slightly reduced sense of life.
Yeah, gosh. Well, I mean, you guys are watching the news, aren't you? So you're seeing that the UK and the USA have some interesting responses to the pandemic, and a very strange experience of being very in touch with home in England, and hearing family and friends and how they're wrestling with the lockdown, but also people genuinely contracting the virus to varying degrees of kind of severity. Here in America, it's massive, essentially. I mean, I know we know this, but it really is big. So 50 states are kind of like 50 countries. And so just recognizing lockdown here probably feels a little bit more like your social distancing. And really depending on which news channel you're listening to and which state governor's saying what really depends on how you're responding. So I'd say my husband Ben and I have been taking a more of a UK approach around very cautious, keeping that social distance, very kind of hyper vigilant around the vulnerable people in our neighborhood, and particularly taking care of those neighbors. Like, we very much believe this is real and not over yet. And so trying to take care of the vulnerable has been a real priority for us over here.
Amazing.
Oh, well done, Miriam. That's brilliant. I mean, I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to dive right in because I know that you've got some real gold to bring, and just want to hear what your thoughts are on different things, really. So I guess my first question to you really is, how do you go about telling people the story of what God has done in your life in a way that is both clear and relevant? And then, you know, how can we prepare ourselves to initiate those conversations and not to stumble over our words once we get there?
Yeah. Gosh, I hope I'm on a journey of this for the rest of my life, but I'd say I'm definitely still on a journey over the last 10 years about how to naturally and authentically be a good friend of God, like mates with Jesus, but therefore a good friend to the people that I'm in community with, whether that be in a university hall residents or my neighbours or my school friends. And to be a good friend for me does mean be real, tell the truth, and be authentic enough to not leave out that I'm friends with God, that I believe he's real and present and today. And so sharing faith for me has been a journey of becoming a better friend with Jesus and a better friend with my friends, and therefore not missing him out of, it sounds really silly, but even like very, just in the last couple of days, for example, if something happens with a friend and none of my friends from school would be calling themselves followers of Jesus, they would be like, good luck, fingers crossed, all good thoughts and wishes with you. As a Christian and as their friend authentically, I know that I must say I'm actively praying for you. And in fact, if I can pray and listen and share what I think God might be saying, I can't say good luck, because that isn't for me how life's made up. Actually, I must pray, because that is the way I would move towards somebody in faith. So even little things like that, which are actually sharing faith, but are kind of the natural response of a friend of Jesus and a friend with some, that I think anyway.
No, I love that, being a friend of God and a friend of others. So in terms of initiating conversations, though, how do you not just be a good friend, but actually bring Jesus into those conversations? You've mentioned prayer. Are there any other ways that you can bring Jesus naturally into conversation, perhaps?
Yeah, and I think it is recognizing sometimes it will take courage. Sometimes there won't be this very obvious moment of, actually, I have a faith in Jesus, and like my understanding of God would be that maybe he'd think this about this situation. Does that make any sense to you? Does that help or whatever? So I would say sometimes you get some natural open door experiences, like people going, what have you done with your weekends? You go, well, actually, I tune into church online 10 a.m. every Sunday. You can actually watch parties on Facebook. It's been a good way for me to stay connected whilst we keep each other safe at a different distance, etc. But I often look for those opportunities. Sometimes, like when my neighbour lost his job in the pandemic, that just took a deep breath and a moment of going, hey, mate, I'd love to pray that you get a job soon, as in this week, because I knew he couldn't keep up rent if he didn't. Can I pray with you and for you now? That's just downright have to take a deep breath and do it, because there wasn't like a natural segue when he's talking about unemployment for me to go, God thinks this about unemployment. He has lots to say about it, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on the situation. But if you're listening, that really helps you respond appropriately and naturally to somebody, like if you've listened to them first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's key, isn't it? Being able to listen and to hear where people are up to. Do you, when you're talking about Jesus, tend to focus on the here and now then? Or do you sometimes deliberately tell people your testimony? Or what kind of balance do you strike in all of that?
Telling someone your testimony, I find a slightly funny one, because I have been raised, I got introduced to Jesus by my parents from year dot. So I used to think I didn't have a testimony because I'd always followed Jesus. Not that I didn't do things in rebellion against him, but I knew him to know that I was walking away in moments or wrestling with him on stuff. So I didn't think I had a testimony growing up, because I'd not like gone to prayer, I'd not walked away for 10 years and then come back knowing better. I'd actually just try to love him every day of my life. Sure. So when it comes to telling my testimony, where some friends really do have a very distinct dark to light experience, almost light switch moment, wow, I actually don't have that kind of story to share. I do sometimes talk about the bigger story of God. I might say, like, did you know that, like, as a Christian, I genuinely believe God made you on purpose, like you're handmade. And maybe the reason you've really struggled in lockdown is because I think people are actually made in community and for community. You know what I mean? So there are some ways you can bring in this big story of God by a very now experience of isolation. But equally, to share your testimony might genuinely mean you share the last thing you felt God said to you, or something that really challenged you when you realized that was God's heart, not just your heart on that. That could be a testimony, and that could have happened yesterday. I think that can be part of your God story.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Miriam, I love the fact that you painted a picture there, which I'm sure many people can relate to, which for many of us, myself included, brought up in a Christian family and went along to church and quite a young age developed a faith of my own. I know for me, and I'm sure for many people, there's almost this risk, isn't there, of two things. One, maybe thinking that actually we don't have a story to tell, as you said. And actually, I think from my own experience as well, having this weight almost upon us that over years of hearing, you need to share your story, you need to share your story. Even though we know we want to, it becomes almost like, to me, it was almost like having a heavy backpack on my back that weighed me down. And so the weight of it was too great for me to get out of, until I kind of taught myself through it and realized the weight was only on my side, not from those who would actually want to hear it. What would your encouragement be to people who maybe have gone through a lifetime so far of feeling like my story is boring, it's not the big conversion moment? How do we grow in confidence to tell that story? And what might you encourage people to draw out that actually would really connect with people in a way that maybe people assume that it wouldn't?
Yeah, I've gone on a very similar journey too, and just recognizing, oh my goodness, I'm not Jesus. I don't do the saving. I can't change someone's heart. And it is God's presence, God's power that, yes, is working in and through me as one of many ways in which God is at work in the world. But it is God who does all of that inviting and all of that rescuing of a heart. We open the door, open up doors of conversation, of curiosity, of prayer, of mystery, of the supernatural, of things that the Bible say that actually kind of can hit you between the eyes and you realize, gosh, this is more than just a book. We're door holders rather than the backpack carriers. And so for those of you wondering, like, oh, I've got nothing to share, I've not done this big courageous thing with my life. Actually, when you think about some of the crazy things of the kingdom that we need most now, it's stuff like the secret of contentment and peace in the middle of an absolutely stormy, chaotic world. It's like the secret that it is better to give away than to receive, and generosity. That's a story. That's a testimony. And that's actually just part of your normal Christian practice. The secret of hospitality, like radical hospitality, having people around the table that you literally would not be friends with were it not that God is friends with them. Do you know, some of these become our little, if you take that big backpack off and you unpack those little elements to what it means to follow Jesus for you, you realize, oh, that could be a little story to share. That could be relevant to that mum at the school gate. That could be relevant to my colleague who seems very angry all the time, but I know it's not at me, but I'm not sure why. You start to unpack these moments and these tiny testimonies that are actually huge in terms of God inviting somebody to go, hey, I'm real. I'm relevant for you too. I'm opening the door of this opportunity. So practice sounds really silly, but just like in a gym, if you do an exercise to strengthen your muscle, I've honestly just practiced seasoning my conversation with Jesus, with choosing to opt in to mentioning something of God, of faith, of my experience of God, of something from scripture that would make sense for this situation. I've practiced until it has become more natural. So now out of my mouth will roll moments of God, even with all my friends that don't know Jesus, as well as naturally as it would in a church context or a small group where predominantly people are like pursuing him. Practice. Like, you don't have to be naturally gifted and talented and then dropping Jesus. I genuinely think we can just practice to decide to opt in to giving people an opportunity for curiosity rather than to step back. Practice.
This is amazing, Miriam. I mean, this is just pure gold. Thank you so much for what you're sharing. I mean,
I love it. It's my favourite thing to talk about, to be honest.
Absolutely. So with this global pandemic hitting us as it is, and the UK and the US, we're in the thick of it, aren't we? And would you say that this is a more significant time than ever? Is this a better time, an easier time, a harder time? Where do you pitch things? How responsive do you think people are at the moment to us sharing our story with them?
Oh, honestly, guys, like, if you're watching this in the UK, now is your time. I can't tell you, like, it's a very hard FOMO moment that I'm having with Jesus, where I know he's asked me to be here in the US.
Oh, bless you.
But my heart longs to be in the thick of unity and of powerful service and of unapologetic hope that's going on in the UK church right now. You are in such a special moment where in the middle, I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? In the middle of a humanitarian crisis, the hope of Christ would be so, just so potent and so needed. And no wonder people are hungry. No wonder people are stumbling into church services on live streams and thinking, I actually need there to be something more. I mean, I've been so just proud of people in the UK, even in their, just those little ways of going, I'm going to choose to share that I'm watching this from my church on Sunday, in case my friends who are scrolling social media in lockdown want to join in. I am going to put a status that says, I believe that prayer works. If there's a particular thing you'd like me to pray for, direct message me and I'd love to pray for you. I'm seeing people choose ways of opening up the doors of sharing faith online. You are in a moment, you're in an extraordinary moment in the UK church. So if you've never had a go before, honestly, now is your time. It's kind of an open goal in terms of people being up for there being more to life than what we're currently being given.
Amazing.
I just love this. This is like an infusion of real hope and a real boldness. Have you always been this bold, Miriam?
Apparently I regularly walked up and talked to strangers and like joined other families. My mum was like, it has been a bit of a nightmare actually. So there is a predisposition to being a bit of a nightmare apparently. But I have practiced. I've when I understood what evangelism was and understood, you know, the mission of God, God's activity in the whole world, and evangelism, our specific invitation to share Jesus and that good news. I've been really trying to take hold of all that stuff that Jesus took hold of us for. That I've practiced in my 20s. Like that was a university moment of like leaving home and going, if I own this for myself, I need to own it with both hands. So yeah, practice as well as a bit of a predisposition to being a nightmare.
Yeah. That's really helpful though, Miriam, because I think what you've spoken about were lots of different things there, but actually that sense of being prepared, like you said, practicing, it doesn't always come innately and naturally to all of us. So taking you, like you said, is, you know, the confidence that maybe you have, if I can draw you right for a moment, right to the other scale, that maybe, or the other end of the scale rather, for somebody that's watching that thinking, well, that sounds great and I'd love to give it a go, but I'm, you know, much more meeker or milder, don't have that confidence. Even over the next week, let's say, what would be maybe the one or two things that you would encourage that person to give a go or to do so that they can gradually grow in confidence as we all are in this?
So I got asked this question yesterday, actually, and I think because of the online space that we're in, where we actually have more opportunity to share with people not face-to-face at the moment because we can't see people. I actually think that gives us a real opportunity to practice sharing our voice before we have to make eye contact, like skin to skin, face to face. I would encourage you to. I actually did this earlier because I wanted to do my own advice. Do you know? I realised I'd said this the other day when I was in a conversation about this, and I thought I actually need to practice what I preach. Right? I would encourage you to just simply ask God. Okay, I believe basically whenever you ask an opportunity to share your faith, you'll probably get one. Right? That's kind of a yes from God. So I dare you to say, God, is there a specific person that you can bring to mind that I could give them a word of hope and encouragement in this time? So just wait for a minute and see whether he drops a friend's name or face into your head, and, you know, go for it. Like, and then I would ask God, because this gives you a chance to practice sharing what you think God might be saying as well. I would ask God, is there a specific word, picture, or encouragement specifically for them that I can share? Because I actually find if I can ask God and then try and write down some words that I think he'd like to say, it actually takes the pressure off me trying to be brilliantly articulate and clever. I can actually try and make it all very prayerful, kind of put the accountability on God to give me something to say. So I just messaged a friend earlier who I prayed for, felt like I had a word to give her. And I just wrote a little text and said, this might sound really weird, but I just felt drawn to pray for this. This came to mind. I hope that encourages. And then the response was actually lovely. And the first time we've probably spoken in that way in years. And so I'd encourage you, even if you're shy, actually a little text or a little message coupled with listening to God and asking him for some words, that could really give you a confidence boost around, it's actually not all on me, remember. And I bet that would give somebody a moment of hope in quite a crazy time.
Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. What words of, you just honestly infused us with courage because you've made it so practical, and this is something that we can all do, right? I mean, this isn't
we can.
difficult. This isn't beyond any of our personalities. A little text, having prayed.
Right.
This is something so easily achievable. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, just as we start to draw to a bit of a close, Sian, why don't you throw out our challenge for this week off the back of what Miriam shared? What is it that we might challenge ourselves with, but also anyone at home watching this evening?
Yeah, great. So as a former teacher, I'm going to set you some homework, if that's okay. Essentially, in chapter 6 of this brilliant book, Story Bearer, Phil asks us to just really to plot out our story, the story of how we became a follower of Jesus. And he breaks it down into tiny sort of bite sizes and says, just plot a few of the key points of your story that you would like to share with someone given the opportunity. And so my challenge to us all is, how about this week we just sit down with a blank piece of paper, plot out those moments when we know that God has intervened in our lives and shown up and made himself so known to us. And then maybe ask a friend if you can practice that with them, on them. It could be a Christian friend, obviously, before you take the plunge and really go and speak to someone who hasn't met with Jesus yet. But how about just practicing? I love that Miriam was just saying, yeah, just practice making this normal. So that is your homework, followers, for this week. Please just practice your story and how you would like to make that known to other people.
Amazing. Thanks, Sean, for throwing that out there. And our prayer is with you, indeed with all of us, to just grow in confidence as we do that and as we practice that. So our thanks again to Miriam. So grateful to have her time right from across the pond. And obviously we pray that blessings will be with her during this continued lockdown. Just all that remains is for us to say thank you to you for joining us. Next week, we've got Des Johnston with us, who's director of Alpha in Scotland. And Sean, you're going to be coming back and joining us again, which we're thrilled about. So thanks to you for hearing more from Sean. Our topic or theme next week is all again about listening as well. And Miriam just went on to say there, didn't she, about actually really listening to God, but also the importance of really listening to others so that we can tune into actually which bit of God's story it might be that we need to draw out to connect the dots with them. So we'd love you to join us again next week. What we'd also love to say to you is both Sean and I work for the Evangelical Alliance. Part of this Story Bearers is because we have a heart across the UK to see Jesus made known, particularly at this time of coronavirus. And we'd love to give you the opportunity this evening to say, come and join us as a member of the Evangelical Alliance. You can help to magnify our voice, work together in unity with us. So there, as you see on the screen, actually, it's really simple and easy to come and join us. It's only £3 a month. So instead of one takeaway coffee that you might go and get at the current time, why not come and join us? You can get that online or take a look at the eauk.org website. And as it said, we'd love to, if you sign up in the next week or so, we'd love to send you a free copy of the Story Bearer book. So next week, as we said, we're all about listening with Des and with Sean. We'd love to see you back then. So until then, God bless. We pray that he's with you on this journey, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 8 p.m. So take care, Sean. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.